decades on the screen, they were simply the puppets of voodoo queens. But one man turned the idea of The Walking Dead on its ear and changed the very face of terror. Today, countries all over the world, every young horror film fan with a camera knows the golden rule: aim for the head. It's the era of the zombie, this time on Missing Reel.
From the stone tablets of the Epic of Gilgamesh in 2500 BC to the high-definition screens of The Walking Dead, popular storytelling has long documented the plague of the zombie apocalypse. In 1932, director Victor Halperin made what many consider to be the first zombie film.
From Haiti, land of the voodoo, comes the most infamous cult of all. Bela Lugosi as Murder Legendre.
I see death.
Master of the undead damned. The sinister power behind the white zombie.
For the next 3 decades, appearances by zombies in the movies were sporadic at best, and they continued to be portrayed as little more than sluggish slave labor for their voodoo masters. But in 1968, filmmaker George Romero married the idea of the voodoo undead with the insatiable, bloodlusting vampire mythos and created a cinematic icon. The reinvention of the zombie as a mindless undead killer and the introduction of gore and splatter effects opened the door for a new kind of horror film.
Night of the living dead, the dead who live on living flesh. The dead whose haunted souls hunt the living whose bodies are the only food for these ungodly creatures. Of the living dead.
But as with most things in the 1970s, initial promise gave way to disappointing reality, with a few odd and entertaining exceptions. It wasn't until George Romero himself returned in 1978 that the zombie train was put back on track with the release of Dawn of the Dead.
In 1968, George Romero brought us Night of the Living Dead. It became the classic horror film of its time.
Not that room! Not that room!
Now, George Romero brings us the most intensely shocking motion picture experience for all times.
It gets up and kills. The people it kills get up and kill. This situation must be controlled before it's too late. They are multiplying too rapidly.
Dawn of the Dead.
What is it?
We've got a war.
I'm afraid.
We have spawned our own savagery. Soon it will consume us all. It is a horrible, hauntingly accurate vision of the mindless excesses of a society gone mad.
They must be destroyed on sight.
When there is no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth.
We are down to the line, folks. We are down to the line.
Dawn of the Dead.
Dawn of the Dead brought the Romero zombie back with a vengeance, thanks in part to groundbreaking special effects and makeup created by the man whose name would become synonymous with zombie evisceration, Tom Savini. Italian film director Lucio Fulci, an over-the-top gorehound himself, was simultaneously making his own zombie epic using the same formula that Romero crafted 10 years earlier. But by the time his film was released, Dawn of the Dead had swept through Europe under the name Zombie, and Fulci's film was released months later as its bastard sequel.
One more step and I'm gonna blast you. Now freeze where you are! voodooism, zombies. So whatever it is, it makes the dead stand up and walk.
The rules were set. Don't get bit, and aim for the head. The 1980s saw an explosion of zombie films, and creative ideas were added to the formula. 1981's Hell of the Living Dead introduced the concept of a toxic mutation as the cause of the undead uprising. And Dan O'Bannon's zombie comedy Return of the Living Dead gave the killer corpses their first bit of dialogue. With the end of the home video era and the closing of many Grindhouse and B-movie theaters in the 80s, interest in the zombie waned. It wasn't until 2002 and the release of Danny Boyle's 28 Days Later that the zombie reignited the imagination of filmgoers and movie makers alike. Zack Snyder, director of The Watchmen and 300, got his big break in 2004 by remaking Dawn of the Dead. Frank Darabont, Academy Award-nominated director of The Shawshank Redemption, brought the Romero zombie to series television with 2010's Walking Dead. Even Romero himself, now in his 70s, continues to add sequels to his zombie film legacy. No longer the mindless slaves of voodoo practitioners, the modern zombie, created and perfected in the Grindhouse era, continues to thrill and terrify movie audiences.